Alright, this is Tannenberg Eagles in the East. As you can see, they're part of the Weltkrieg simulation series. This is by SPW or Schroeder Publishing and Wargames. And you can see from the copyright there that this was originally published sometime in the late 90s. I think Board Game Geek says that Tannenberg Eagles in the East was published in 1999. That says 98. This is the 2012 version, which comes with these updated Sterling edition rules, and this comes from the box set called the Eastern Front, which is a 6-scenario set. But this one, Tannenberg, is widely considered to be the standard sort of starter introduction for the game, and yeah, so it's operational World War One, and it's probably best known for the map where the hexes are split into sort of sections of pi. So you can see a hex here, but you can see three of the 6 sections are this broken terrain, and 3 are clear terrain, and down here you can see 4 lots of broken and some woods. And so you know, you can, as you're moving or fighting, you'll be moving across different terrain or fighting across different terrain depending on which direction you're moving between the hexes. So it means that the hexes themselves contain lots more information and provide the opportunity for more nuance in your combat, your moving and so on. So that's one of the key elements of the game right there. While we're on key elements of the system, another one is this combat chart. This is not odds-based combat. You simply total your number of factors, roll a d6 and cross-index them. So if you've got 31 attack, then you find the 31, you roll your dice, you apply any modifiers for terrain and what have you, and you find the strength point losses that you inflict on the opponent, and they then take their strength points and will usually either double them or triple them and find that column and attack you back. And what that means is that if you're attacking at 3-1, it's roughly an even fight. More than 3-1 and you probably get the better of it. Worse than 3-1 you probably don't. There are lots of subtleties in there as well, but that's another key point of the game, is this basic the non-odds based combat. And what's cool about this, I guess, is that, you know, if the defender's got 6 strength points, you don't have to go rummaging around for exactly 18 to get the 3-1. You can attack with 17 on pretty much the same table, and so on. So that's another key element of this system. And the third and final key element of the system that I'll point out are the supply tracks for either side. We've got an Entente supply track there, the 1st and 2nd Russian armies currently with 50 supply points each, and a Central Powers supply track here, and 100 supply points in the German 8th Army, which unfortunately the track only goes up to 99 because you've got a 49 spot and a plus 50 on the reverse of the thing. The rules do say that no army can have more than 100 supply points, no HQ. But it doesn't actually give you a way to mark 100 supply points. You can only have 99. So I've put it on the 99 step, but we all know it's 100. We've got a turn track down here with a phase track down there. All good. And up here we have a track for keeping track of demoralization points. Unfortunately, this box set only came with markers for victory points, VPs, which is slightly disturbing when you buy a very expensive game and it doesn't give you the markers to mark the things you need to mark. But there you go. We've got VP markers, but they're actually tracking demoralization points for either side, and those are essentially victory points. They are how you win and lose the game, usually by inflicting more demoralization points on your opponent than you take. Right, I'll get into more of the rules as we actually play, but the basics here are we've got sort of East Prussia here, Königsberg here, and there are some special rules in this scenario where Russian infantry, as they become activated, have to march towards Königsberg as quickly as they can, and we've got a big stack up over here, and then in the 1st army we've got some stacks down here in these fortresses, and then we've got a 2nd army down here with more stacks of infantry that's got to march up towards Königsberg that way. And the basics are that if they get within 8 movement points of Königsberg, they at a certain point, which is at the end of the in 2 turns time, if we play 3 turns, and then we count up the number of Russian divisions within 8 movement points of Königsberg and award the Russians a certain number of points, and we count those that are at 8 hexes, 9 hexes and 10 hexes, and give the Russians fewer and fewer points depending on how far away those are. And then we check this table here and we see from that how many reinforcements the Germans are going to bring in. So if the Russians score less than 20 points, the Germans get no reinforcements, whereas if the Russians get up to, say, 61 or more points, the Germans get a 9-5 infantry division, 5 8-5 infantry divisions, 5 2-4 Landwehr brigades, and 6 2-6 cavalry divisions. So you'd think to yourself, well, the Germans want to let the Russians close to Königsberg. Then the downside for the Germans is that they then take demoralisation points equal to half the strength of all the reinforcements they got. So I counted this lot up and I think it came to 71. Something like that. So they would get 71 strength points of reinforcements, which would mean taking 35.5, 36 demoralisation points, which are the sort of victory point gauge for the game. The other thing is that once we get into September, every Russian controlled hex that would count towards these points over here, so within 10 movement points of Königsberg, is worth a further 2 demoralisation points for the Germans. So that's all quite complicated. There's the Russians, if they get to hexes like this, 2104, 2105, this, counting through clear as 1, broken as 1 and woods 2, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So anywhere in this area, and the Russians are scoring all those points. Also, if they can get across the river into here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 for the broken, 1 for the river, 5, 6, 7, 8. If they can get into this area, that's scoring lots of points. So I've had a look at I've played this scenario a couple of times now, just firstly to iron out rules problems or my rules understanding. I wouldn't say there are rules problems, but my understanding of them. And then to try out a basic throw what the Germans have got around in the way of the advancing Russians and see what happens. And what happens is that you're spread too thin as the German player. The big Russian stacks can form up and pick individual divisions off piecemeal. You get slaughtered on that front. The Russians bully their way through to with huge numbers of divisions through to within 8 hexes or 7 hexes of Königsberg, and then score massive numbers more points. The other problem that you have is that there's a second army marching up from the south down here, and you end up fighting on 2 fronts, with a line trying to protect Königsberg from the south and another one trying to protect Königsberg from the east. And that creates problems because your HQ ends up spread too thin. And the reason I say that is that if you want to attack or defend, you have to expend these supply points that I was showing on this track earlier. If you want to attack, your HQ has to be within 4 movement points of the divisions or the units that are attacking. If you want them to attack at full strength, you'll start taking penalties to their attack strength if you're further away than 4 movement points. You can defend at 8. You can defend at full strength with units that are 8 movement points from your HQ, but to attack, you have to be within 4. And so the Germans then run into a problem of, well, they're facing an enemy up here and an enemy down here, both of which have got inside Germany. they can't be attacking on both fronts at once, so they can, if they want to counterattack, the HQ needs to be there, which means it's not in the other place, and so they get sort of torn between two, two fronts with only one headquarters, and that looked quite tricky. So when I tried to defend thinly across both fronts, that didn't work at all. I couldn't see how I could make that work. Possibly because I played very badly, but I couldn't see how to make that work. So as a strategy, I've now got to decide what I'm going to do instead. And I think what I'm going to do instead is try and wall off the Russians down here on the south front. In fact, maybe no, I might not even do that. I think what I might do is try and wall off the Russians in this rough terrain, but let them get in so that I get lots, so they score lots and lots of those points, but I, as the German player, get lots and lots of reinforcements, and then try and counterattack with all those reinforcements once they come in. So I think I'm actually going to play a much more dangerous game and stop trying to screen off these big Russian armies, because it just lets them barrel through the defenders, as I say, spread too thin. I'm going to let them come into Germany and try and draw a line somewhere where I think I can then counterattack. And actually what I'm going to do is try and hold the Russians up in this part of Prussia, and bottle them up behind, using these rivers and things as defences, and see if I can't slow that lot down. And then I want to bring my reinforcements in quickly wherever they come on, I think on this rail line down here, and just try and smash into whatever I've got grouped up down here that I've let through into this, just into southern Germany down here, or the southern part of Prussia, East Prussia. So yeah, that's my plan for this game. I've talked for a while now, so I'll come back with some gameplay. So the first couple of turns of this game starts quite slowly, because there's a mobilization schedule here, and you can see that on turn, months are divided into 8 turns, so it says August turn 3, which is where the game starts. The Germans get to use their 8 5 infantry divisions and their 2 6 cavalry divisions, and it says all, but they've got one of those, and they've got 6 infantry divisions, and nothing else can move. And then the Russians can use its infantry from under the command of 1st Army HQ and all its cavalry. So we get off to a reasonably slow start, but it does get interesting right from the off. So the Germans have got 2 8 5 divisions in here, 2 under the HQ there, 2 up here, and a cavalry division up here, and those are the only 6 units they can move. So I've got to try and set up a defensive perimeter in both. Well, yeah, no, I've got to try and I'm going to set up a defensive perimeter, but then I'm going to pull back as the Russians approach. I think that's what I'm going to do, and see how much ground I have to give up, and then take it from there. Yeah, that's my plan. All right, initial moves from the Germans here. Then I'm a bit zoomed in here, but we pushed our infantry out into this area here with some cavalry tucked in behind us. The reason for this is we wanted to try and stop the Russian infantry from crossing this river easily. Now, when you're not moving into enemy zones of control, you can use column movement and have half as many movement points again, which means this Russian infantry is going to move 6 rather than 4. It's a combat strength move. So the 4-4 Russian infantry in here, with its full column move, could go 2 into here. It's 2 for the forest and 3, 1 for the river, but -1 for the rail line. So 2, 4 into here for the forest hex side there, and then clear hex put across river would be 2 more. The rail line only reduces costs of 3 or more. So it would be 2, 4, 6, but we can't use that 6 to come in here because there's a zone of control from the from the German infantry division. So we couldn't use column move to get in here. We've put another division to keep watch down here, and the cavalry is in behind to stop the Russian cavalry from trying sneaking in around us and then preventing us withdrawing in ways that we might want to. So that's there to try and prevent any infiltration by the Russian cavalry, which looked like it could get become quite a nuisance if we let it. And then similarly down here in the south, we've just pushed 2 German infantry divisions here and here, and again you can see zones of control all the way around here. So we're trying to stop we'll try and deny the Russians' column movement up into Germany, even if we can't, even if we are not quite strong enough to hold them off in combat yet. So we're just trying to slow them down at the moment, and I'll do the Russian moves. Okay, so Tannenberg here, the only Russian units to activate or to mobilise is the language they use. So the mobilisation for the Russians in this turn, the infantry from the 1st Army HQ, but not the artillery, not the engineers, I don't think. Maybe the engineers, but only the infantry, but not the HQ itself, and all its 1/6 cavalry. So nothing down here moved apart from the Russian cavalry, which pushed out onto the sort of borders to try and make it more expensive for German units advance. If they choose to try and advance, that will make the zones of control more costly to enter. Up here, the infantry came forward as far as it could, with the zones of control making it impossible to have enough movement points to get in here. But the Russian cavalry tried to push round the flanks here and found a route, again because the column movement can give you 50% more move as long as you don't enter a zone of control. So they were able to sneak through here between this infantry blocked up by these lakes, but up through here, and just work its way in behind this German infantry division, which is now in a slightly precarious spot. And yeah, we're going to have to work out now how to get it out of there. Yeah, so that didn't work as well as I'd hoped, and yeah, we're going into turn 2, and it's going to be the German moves to try and rectify that situation. Alright, the Germans have had their second turn, and you can see here they've formed something of a line down here. But because of my moves to stop the Russian advance being quite so quick, they're actually a little bit safer here, because the Russians can't quite get into these 2 hexes and then force an attack in here at high odds, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4 for the move, but plus 1 for the zone of control, and they haven't got 5 movement points to get in there because you can't column move into a zone of control. So though the Russians can get 1 stack over here, they can't get both over here. So we're feeling slightly better about this setup. However, we are going to struggle to stop the Russians getting in here and pushing forward and then being very close to Königsberg and scoring lots of points. Down here, similarly, we're just trying to form something of a line in better terrain than being forward here, and seeing what the Russians do. And this second Russian army only activates this turn, so it will sort of be approaching us next turn, and we'll see where we have to fall back to, so as not to allow it to inflict losses and get into our territory. We only want one or the other. So now the Russians get to move. With the Russians, we are now moving everything from the first HQ. So I think the HQ itself can move, and the artillery and engine. No, there are no engineers. So the HQ and the artillery can move in addition to all the combat units. And down here we can move infantry, I think, from this army, but not engineers, artillery, or the HQ, or anything else that's there. And of course all the cavalry's moving as well. Okay, the Entente position at the end of the second turn, or the game turn 4, August turn 4, but second game turn. Infantry's all moved up as far as it can, with the cavalry protecting the flanks down here, and further up towards Königsberg. The Russian First Army is pushed as far forward as it can. Again, cavalry screening, trying to protect the HQ back here, and just probing for gaps right up round in the north here, perhaps hoping to push in behind here and cause some problems later. So now we are into August 5th turn, the third game turn, and it's at the end of this turn that we check to see how close the Russians have got to Königsberg, and therefore what the points the Germans amass is, or the points the Russians amass, and therefore the German reinforcements and German demoralisation hit for that. I think we're going to pull back with all our German forces across the board, just make it impossible for the Russians to actually get to us. So I will try and hold them as far at bay as possible. Yeah, I think the plan was to hold them down here. Well, no, I think the plan was to hold them up here and try and let them advance in here so that our reinforcements could swing in and clobber them later. I don't think that's tenable. I think this position looks more holdable, but yeah, this is too weak and strung out to really hold now against what we're facing. So I think we may have to pull back on both fronts, get as many reinforcements as we can, and see what damage we can do with our counterattacks. So that's now my plan. So in keeping with my overall strategy here, I've pulled the Germans back as far as I can, further into the forests and broken ground here, and sort of concentrated them some more, and we've got a fortress here as well to protect as well. So we're well dug in there, and we've got 16 strength in a stack there. So we're fairly well protected down here, and there's some gaps on the flanks with just the odd infantry brigade holding over there. But I don't think the Russians can seriously get over there and put much of a threat in. And then up here we've done the same. We've kind of concentrated some forces behind this river here, 13 factors there, 13 factors here. I think we've left enough of a gap that they'll push in, and this brigade here might be in serious trouble. But anyway, I think the Russians are going to make enough ground here that we'll get a lot of reinforcements and hopefully be able to counterattack. So let's see what the Russians are able to do here. The scenario kind of forces the Russians for these first 3 turns to keep moving towards Königsberg if possible. So I think I am going to have to sort of try and shuffle them round to get closer to Königsberg, and then we'll see if there's an attack up here. And similarly, I think they are going to push up towards Königsberg as much as they can with this infantry, and then we'll see what attacks are viable. So that's my next task. Okay, here in Tannenberg Eagles in the east, part of the Weltkrieg. I've advanced the Russians as far as I can into German territory, so you can see the Russian stacks have made progress in here and also up in here. The Russian stacks here, cavalry there, stack there, some cavalry around there, and I'm now looking at combat for the Entente, the Russian player. So I don't think I'm going to risk combat down here. I've no need to right now. This is quite a strong stack. 16 strength. There's no way I'm going to inflict 8 casualties with my roughly 30 or 33 whatever strength points I've got here. So I would then take a counterattack on the 16 times 3, 48 table. I'd have negative modifiers for the forest, which would also give the defender positive modifiers to the dice roll, and I'd likely take a very bad result there. Up here, however, there are more options. So one thing I could do is take both my stacks here, 36 factors, and attack into these Germans here of 13 factors. And that would be roughly evens for me. I'd take a -1 on my dice roll because of this broken terrain here that the Germans would elect to use as defensive terrain. But overall, if we came over to the combat charts, I'd be attacking with 36 factors with a -1 on the dice roll. You could see I'd be doing between 3 with, if I rolled a 1 and ended up with a 0, I'd do 3 strength point losses. If I rolled a 6, -1 to 5, I'd do 7 losses and force a retreat, which would then mean the Germans counterattacked at double strength rather than triple, and would attack me back with 26 factors rather than 39. If they get their full 39 though, they're doing me between, they haven't got any pluses, but between 4 and 8. So I'm taking slightly the worst of it unless I luck out with a 1 in 6 chance and force them to retreat. That's one option. But another option is to attack this little infantry brigade here. 2 strength with my 18 strength points next to it. And I've made a mistake with the Germans here, or at least I didn't see this, but the Russians have snuck in some cavalry here. And what this means is that there's zones of control completely surrounding this German unit and no friendly units occupying any of those hexes, and that means it is, according to the, in this rule set, surrounded. And being surrounded is bad. It means, well, firstly it couldn't get supply in there for its counterattack, so its strength would be halved before it counterattacked, which would be 1, so it would counterattack with 3. Secondly, any casualties over a quarter would cause it to retreat, so its counterattack would only be doubled, and then its retreat would have to be into a zone of control with no with no friendly units present, which would force it then to column attack against anything that was adjacent to it. Assume, let's say the worst case is we only did 1 casualty to the 1 strength point loss to this. It would counterattack at 3 strength, which would only cause a hit on a 6, and then it would have to retreat, say, to here, and then it would have to column attack into our 2 cavalry units here, and its strength would be halved, so it would be 1 halved, and ours would be doubled to 6. Ours would be doubled to 4. It'd probably be halved for supply to 2, and then tripled for counterattacking to 6. And so you can see some fairly complex sort of little thoughts going on there about how that, what looks like a simple combat could work out. Because the other thing is, looking at this, we want to minimise the amount of supplies the Russians we put into this. We want to wipe this out, and we want to minimise the amount of supply it's taking us. In other words, I'd like to not supply this attack at all and just attack at half strength with 9 and try and wipe it out like that. And if that doesn't wipe it out, I'd like the fact that it has to counterattack our cavalry to wipe it out. So that's, I think, what we're going to do. We're going to announce an unsupplied attack into there on 9 strength and see how that goes. The other thing to note is that because this unit is surrounded, any losses it takes right now cause double the normal demoralisation points. So each strength point loss causes 2 demoralisation rather than 1, because they're considered to have been surrenders. If it manages to retreat, I don't think it will then be surrounded, because it can trace out of it's no longer in these zones of control. So if it does retreat, I think its losses would then count just as normal combat losses. Although I would check that in the rules. And just coming down to check those rules, it would still be, they'd still be considered surrendered units. So the counterattack, the forced counterattack, would result in losses that would be deemed surrenders. I haven't phrased that very well. The German unit, if it retreated and then was forced to launch a column attack, losses suffered by the stack of units that originally retreated are considered to have surrendered. So all the losses suffered by that German unit would be considered surrendered and therefore costing double demoralisation. So let's do this. Let's do first. Let's do the attack. We're not providing any supply for this attack at all. So it's 18 strength halved to 9. And if you look at the terrain here, we've got clear terrain, and clear terrain on the 3 hex side. So we're through this hex side. The Germans could choose this hex side or this hex side, but they're all clear terrain and they can't just choose the river. So there's no modifiers. It's 9 strength. They've got a 4, and 9 strength with a 4 is 1 loss. Okay, so the Germans are going to take a strength point loss and then have to retreat. The retreat will reduce it by a third, but that still means they take a strength point loss. And then they're having to retreat. So before they retreat, they will counterattack, and they are unsupplied, so they are strength 1, and then they are doubled because they are having to retreat. So they are strength 2. On a 6, they will cause a strength point loss. They've got a 6, and they've caused a strength point loss to the Russians. Okay. Wow. So we take care of that. So we will flip the Germans, and then they will have to retreat into here, and we will take a strength point loss of that Russian brigade and pop that there. And the Germans have retreated, so we will mark that down on our demoralisation points. The Russians have taken 1. The Germans, because these are surrenders, they have taken 2. And now, because the Germans have retreated into an enemy zone of control with no friendly units, they are forced to make a column attack to try and break out against all adjacent enemy units, which is these 2 cavalry, and the cavalry will take that. So the Germans are attacking at 1 strength point halved. I assume they get a minimum of 1, but the Russians will use this because they've got to attack into these 2 hex sides. The Russians will choose this broken terrain for their defensive terrain, so that's a -1 on the German dice with a 1 strength attack. And you actually need positives to get anything from a 1 strength attack. You can see it's all zeros, and with a -1 it's all zeros. So the Germans can't do anything in terms of damage. The cavalry has got 2 strength in total. It's halved to 1 because neither of them can we can't get supply over there. Defending, there's a maximum supply length of 8 movement points. And I don't think we can trace it because it would be 1 from our HQ. We'd have to trace back, or from the unit you trace back rather than 4 from the HQ, but we can't trace into here because it's in an enemy zone of control. So we'd have to go here for 2, 3, through the, and then we've got 2 rivers to cross either this way or this way. 2, 3, through woods and across a river would be 6, through woods and across a river would be 9, and so no, there's absolutely no way to trace a supply route through there. So this defence would be unsupplied. So we're strength 2, we're halved for being unsupplied, which is 1, but we're doubled for being the defender against a column attack, which makes us 2. And then we're tripled because we're not having to retreat, so we're on a strength of 6, and we get a 4, 6 strength with a 4 is another loss, and so that's another surrender for the German unit. This German unit is gone into the casualty pile. I'll put that up there. And that's another 2 demoralisation points for the Germans. And that loss was a bit unfortunate. They had a 1 in 6 chance of doing that, and we had to take the loss. That's a little bit unpleasant. But anyway, that has now opened up a nice gap here for our cavalry to try and sneak in behind these German units and put some retreat and surrounding pressure on them before we launched an attack against them, which was the goal here. So that's mission accomplished. We could also have advanced after combat into here. Would that be closer to Königsberg? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It technically would, but closer than 6 hexes, 7 hexes isn't really required. So I'm not going to. I'm not forced to move to advance after combat. It's only when I move that I'm currently forced to try and move closer to Königsberg. Although I think even those rules require some common sense, because you know, in the face of serious enemy presence, I don't think you're expected to just ignore them and walk your units around them into out of supply situations and so on. I think you are allowed to use the presence of enemy units to temper your move somewhat, not just robotically walk forward. So yes, I'm not going to advance after combat there. So we are now going to be into the counting up points for how close the Russian divisions have got to Königsberg and applying the results of that. I'll come back with that next. Okay, so I'm doing some calculations as to the proximity of the Russian army to Königsberg. We have a stack here which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 movements of points away from Königsberg, and that has got 4 divisions and a brigade, 4 infantry divisions and an infantry brigade, so 4.5 divisions in it. This stack is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 away, and that's got 4 infantry divisions in it. This stack here has got 6 infantry divisions and is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 across the river, so 8 hexes away. 8 movement points away, sorry, and this one is a further movement point away because it's 1 to go into there to there. So this is 6 infantry divisions at 8 hexes, and this is 4 more infantry divisions at 9 hexes. So if we look at the calculations then, at 9 hexes, at 9 movement points, we get 2 points for each infantry division. We've got 4 of those, so that's 8 points. 3 for every infantry division in a hex inside Germany. It's 8 movement points away. We've got 10 infantry divisions that are 8 movement points away. 6 in the south, 4 in the north. So that's 30 points. So we're on 38. And then we've got 4.5, which are closer than 8. So we get 5 points for those, and that's 22.5. So we get 8, 38, 40, 50, 60.5 points. It doesn't say whether to round halves, but if we look at the chart here, 57 to 60 is this line here, and 61 or more is this line here. Well, we've got 60.5. Based on this chart, I'm going to round up because 60.5 is more than 57 to 60. Although it doesn't quite reach 61, but yeah, I'm going to round up because it doesn't fall into this. I suppose if we had 56.5, it wouldn't fall into that, and I'd round up to 57. So I'm based on this table, on how it's laid out, I'm going to round up to the 61, which means that the maximum amount of German reinforcements are going to come in, which is a 9.5 infantry division, 5.85 infantry divisions, 5.24 Landwehr brigades, and 6.26 cavalry divisions, and that lot will all come in on the first turn in September in hex 0118. And the other thing that's going to start happening next turn is that the rail lines are going to come into play. We've not used rail lines yet because the scenario rules say rail movement can't happen until the 6th turn in August, which is the next turn. So what we're going to see is a huge stack of German reinforcements arrive here in the 1st of September, and then we're going to have to work out how to rail them to the front as quickly as we can. It's going to be interesting given that our rail line is blocked and technically destroyed here by these Russian divisions, but we do have alternative mainline rail routes that run off you know, up here and so on through Danzig and back round and so on, so we can still get them places via longer rail routes. But it's going to be super interesting to see what we can do with the rail moves. The Germans have advantages rail moves. They can normally you can't get on trains in enemy zones of control, but the Germans can. Normally you can't get get off trains in enemy zones of control, but the Germans can get off trains in Russian zones of control. No other nationalities, but the Russian zones of control. Normally, if you've moved by train, you can't then move into zones of control. Well, again, the Germans can. They're super good at moving stuff around by train and getting into combat positions, so they're very efficient at that. The British have some of those advantages as well, but we've got no British in this scenario. Anyway, the Germans are very good at moving by trains, so they're going to have to exploit those advantages, because I'm about to bring all those reinforcements on. Those reinforcements also mean that the Germans suffer half a demoralisation point for each strength point of reinforcements forced to be taken by this step. And if we add that up, that's 9, 49, 59, 69, 71. So that's 35 and a half. I'm going to round that up to 36 demoralisation points for the Germans. So they've gone from 4 to 40, and so you can see that they have got significant work to do to make up a 39-point demoralisation point deficit with all those reinforcements. So let's see what they can do as they counterattack over the next, when their reinforcements arrive. But they're not going to have long to do it, because we've got 2 more turns where they're not really reinforced at all, and the Russians are going to be still looking to cause some damage before the German reinforcements arrive.